When I found out I was going to be a parent, I immediately felt a lot of anxiety and worry. So I went on to BetterHelp to try to look for a therapist to help me with that.
My relationship with my family and with my boyfriend and with myself were suffering. I really needed help.
I was ruminating a lot. Really getting those thoughts out to a therapist and getting feedback was just life-changing.
Discover what BetterHelp Online Therapy can do for you. Visit BetterHelp.com today.
Ellie's Eden, part of Azure Standard, was created for people who care about being thoughtful with what they buy, what they eat, and where it comes from. Growing even a small garden is a simple way to live that out. With healthy plant starts grown in Oregon from trusted non-GMO seeds, along with quality garden essentials, Ellie's Eden makes it easier to begin. Gardening helps you slow down, choose carefully, and stay connected to real food and the land. Learn more about Ellie's Eden at azuresstandard.com.
Welcome to the Irish NFL Show on the Believe Network and brought to you in association with QuinBet. Well, 'tis in the year of 26 and the lovely month of June when the gadflies are all swarming and dogs howling at the moon. Unfortunately, though, there won't be any jocks are going to Stuttgart and there won't be any repeats of the Irish heroics of 88, 90 or 94 at the World Cup, which kicks off in 3 days' time at the time we're recording here. But you'll always have the Irish NFL Show, and we are going to take the scenic route between now and September by using the long summer days to take a look at where each team and each division stands. Brian O'Leary, Kieran Boyle and Craig Rigdon with me, Conor Brophy, as we kick it off by looking at the AFC East. And Craig, I realise I did you a grave disservice there because you will, of course, have rooting interests in the World Cup. The world is in motion for your lads playing for England. We can all agree it's the greatest World Cup song ever.
Connor, Craig's face there when you mentioned Jocks that goes to Stuttgart. I think you've lost him there. Ironically, Craig O'Rigdon was a bit lost at the start.
We've been brainwashing Craig for people who haven't been watching regularly. We've brainwashing Craig ever since we were at the Super Bowl, trying to Irishize him, Gaelicize him as much as possible. And it's working. Like, he uses lots of that's lovely, and talks about the weather all the time, and he'd be getting county councillors to fix potholes before we know where he is. Complaining about his mammy making a tea with too much milk in it, but no, he's still got rooting interest in the World Cup. Unlike the rest of us, he'd be cheering for England.
I got the US who are going to make it graceful. First round exit. They are
best fans in the world. The best fans in the world.
Oh, yeah. Welcome to our World Cup special.
We will eventually get to talk about the other type of football.
Oh, the AFC is an interesting division, Colin, to kick it all off. Huh?
It is. And look, let's start with we're going bottom to top this time around. Excuse me. But we'll start off with the New York Jets, Brian.
And I'm going to say something crazy. Well, it's crazy because the Jets fandom have little faith, and gradually over the course of the last few months, it's slightly coming back, which it does every offseason. Kieran joked recently in one of our episodes, sure don't they always win the offseason, the Jets, but I genuinely believe Jets have won the offseason. I think they've done the best of what they could do going into this offseason. Bearing in mind the players they brought in free agency and the experience that these players have, they know how to win in the league, tried and tested. I think the GM has done a great job in terms of trying to recoup picks for the future with an eye to next year with a quarterback heavy draft ahead, and Kieran would know very well about that. And even in the draft itself, there was the conversation whether they're going to go Arvell Reese, they're going to go David Bailey. I think ultimately they made the right decision. No reflection of Arvell Reese. I'm biased, I have to say that. He's now a Giant. I think it's more about who's going to give them the best opportunity to win now, who's going to be the most impactful rookie. It was David Bailey. They believe it's David Bailey, judging by all the conversation. And then what have they been missing for quite some time? Really aggressive players on offense that can do a job. And they've already got some good players in their own right offensively. Connor, you think Breece Hall's coming back? They got Wilson, the wide receiver. Bring in a tight end, which was talked about as arguably one of the best in the draft. I know there was other players ahead of him in the pecking order. And then they make another deal to get in at the back end of the first round and get the wide receiver that everyone felt they had. It just looks right now, Jets are an organization that actually know what they're doing for the change. And that's something that's not really been the norm for quite some time. Whether it'll stand up come next season, I'm not entirely sure in terms of them being challenging. But I think for Jets fans, bearing in mind where they've been over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, it's looking like they're in a positive situation and upward projection. The quarterback is still a question mark. Can Geno Smith play. I'm going to give Geno Smith the Geno Smith we saw in Seattle as opposed to the Raiders one, Connor, because everyone spoke about he had little to play with. His offensive line was a disaster. That offensive line, by the way, Connor, played every snap of last season. So fine, they had a bad season, but you would like to think they're coming back. It's not a case of patching it all up together. They all know each other. You would think that would help Geno Smith and put an offense performance on the field. I think the Jets are in for a good season.
Craig, talk to us about the draft, because it's not crazy to say that it looks like a solid draft, and they picked up some really useful pieces there. We'll get to the organization, which is the big caveat that I have in all of this in a moment, but it wasn't a bad draft, and they also have serious draft capital stockpiled.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we spoke about David Bailey. As Brian rightly said, it was the right choice for them at that pick. And I think all three of us were waxing lyrical about the Kenyon Sadiq pickup as well. We had all called that. We all kind of nailed in on it and said they could go wide receiver here, but Sadiq's still available. Why would you not take that weapon? And that's exactly what they did. I actually think that the Jets are in almost a win-win situation with this season, because if they do really well, they show a little bit of progress. They show that they can draft well and everything's moving forward. If they're mediocre and they can at least point to their younger players playing well, then you've got something to build on. But if they're not great, then they have their pick of the quarterbacks next year and then go on from there with an already young roster that can all grow together. So it almost feels like no matter what the Jets can do this year, they're going to end up winning. And it all starts by what they did in the draft this season. They also picked up Omar Cooper Jr., who is going to be a really good addition to that wide receiver room with Garrett Wilson, and should really push them forward as they start to develop this team. And it does feel like they are at that pure rebuild stage now. They don't have any of the Klingons that they had of the past, and they can only hopefully look up.
Kieran, I can buy all of that, and I can buy the Jets moving in a positive direction if the Jets don't Jets, which they always do. And a lot of this depends ultimately, in my mind, on whether Aaron Glenn is actually the right coach. And I don't think it's fair to judge him completely on last season. He's a rookie head coach in a difficult situation. But where all this starts to unravel in my mind is if, let's say, they go 3-14, and they may only end up with a handful of wins, as Craig has pointed out, given the quarterback situation and given the overall roster situation, which still, puts them among one of the weakest rosters in the league, notwithstanding the positive additions we've talked about. If you start it again and you're bringing in another new head coach and there's another change of direction and it's another rookie quarterback thrown into the shark tank, then we're right back to where we started from.
Yeah, and nobody would really be surprised because it's the Jets, and nothing in their last 15, 16 years would indicate that they're going to do anything, really positive or do anything, outstanding in the league or make anybody stand up and take notice. Now, we've all talked about the draft. We've all, been full of praise for what they did in the draft. And it's I'm going to put it more if the Jets are going to be successful, and I think we were all kind of surprised that Glenn was brought back. I know I was. I thought he was for the chop. But I think we do have to give a little praise to Darren Mougey. I think the difference between him and, say, past GMs of the Jets, say Idzik, McCagnon, and even Tannenbaum, they were very, especially Tannenbaum, very, bombastic and, hyping up the Jets a lot, always talking about the team. Mougey's kind of quietly doing his work. The Jets have been very quiet this last couple of months. Usually, like I've said in the past, the Super Bowl champions at the offseason, they've been very, very quiet. Florham Park has been just humming with activity. There's just drills and OTAs, and it's been quiet there. There's no controversy. There's no crazy stuff coming out.
All right, well, let's get to it now that you give me the obvious segue. It's been quiet because the noise is elsewhere in New York City.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, everything's quiet. Except on 34th Street and 7th Avenue in Manhattan. But getting back to the Jets, I think there's a couple of things, and I do like what Craig said, and obviously, what Brian was saying, I do take on board as well. However, there's a couple of caveats in my opinion. Geno Smith, I like all these picks. We talked about Omar Cooper, even D'Angelo Palms, the corner. Great picks in the draft. However, when it all comes down to it, Geno Smith is going to be under center with week one. And Brian said, are we going to get the Seattle version? Or are we going to get the Raiders version? And I'm, if the Jets get somewhere in the middle, they're going to be okay. But will they get
as long as they don't get the original Jets version? Or you get the jaw.
he's going to want to forget all about that chapter in Jets history. But it all depends on what they get out of Geno, because it's still a solid line, albeit they lost Vera Tucker to the Pats. But they still have Fashanu, Membu, Josh Myers. They still have a solid O line from last year, so the pieces are there. But the pieces have been there in the past with the Jets, with Aaron Rodgers the last couple of years. The pieces are there, but once the whistle goes and the snaps start, things fall apart. And I do like what Mougey's been doing. I am concerned about Glenn. I think he's a little bit over his head in a head coaching position, and I think this is probably going to be his last year. I think Mougey's probably planning on that as well, because with 3 wins last year, the ceiling for the Jets is probably, 5 wins. Would that be progress? 6 wins, But with everything the way it lines out, Frank Reich back in, you got a new D coordinator and Brian Duker. Is there enough there to get the Jets over the hump? And I don't think there is. I think that down the line, 27-28 looks good. Are they going to go full? You talked about the draft picks. Are they going to go full pelt after Arch Manning? But I still want to pump the brakes a little bit on the Jets. It's all been positive, but again, the Jets have always been positive in April, May, June, and July. But once the ball is snapped and real games start, it kind of falls back into the trend of the Jets being the Jets. They're in a better place because I think their GM is much better than what they've had in the last 15, 20 years. They've got much better skill position players. Defense looks decent. My questions, though, will be the quarterback and the head coach, probably 2 of the most important positions in the NFL.
When people turn to telehealth for weight loss, they're looking for real support. That's why more people are choosing OrderlyMeds.com. OrderlyMeds connects you with real doctors and access to proven GLP-1 medications like semaglutide and tirzepatide. No guessing, just a more supportive experience, and all shipped directly to your door in discreet packaging. Do your research, ask questions, then visit OrderlyMeds.com/podcast for an exclusive offer. That's OrderlyMeds.com/podcast. Individual results may vary, not medical advice. Eligibility required. See site for details.